wondering, because of this mild flu, how such an enormous waste of money could happen, and how millions of people could have been vaccinated parallelly to the seasonal vaccination, so it's a double vaccination, without any scientific evidence to do so. And there is Poland, for instance, where the health minister, she's experienced in public health, where she said, no, we don't buy this vaccine, and the Polish now are very well off. They are not vaccinated, they didn't spend the money. And in other nations, the people didn't trust. The French, for instance, they bought for 90% of the population, they bought vaccines, and only 6% took the vaccine. It's similar in Germany, and nevertheless, people are well off. This was the mildest flu ever, and the people were much more clever than the government. So we have to find out what was going on with WHO. Why did they do this pandemic alarm? And we found out that there is a public-private partnership within WHO, which developed the last 10 years, and which the very powerful pharmaceutical companies seem to have used quite well for them, for their purpose, for their shareholders, because the decisions there were the reason why they now earn so much money with this vaccine. And we don't know what really happened. We only know that they changed the definition of pandemic, which was a very dangerous thing before, and now it's just a normal flu is called a pandemic, and this is the reason why the business for pharmaceutical companies was open.
Well, Doctor, looking at this, and again, we're talking to the former head. He just left his post, regular rotation off of it, last month as the head of the Health Council of Europe.
I still go on cooperating with my colleague and working on this matter very intensively.
So you're still part of it. My point is this. So out of the gates, and we noticed this, they changed the definition of a pandemic. So because they knew that it was very mild and wasn't a pandemic by the old measurement, not even near. So out of the gates, we know that that is fraud. And then in the reports I've been reading, the council and yourself have been talking about that the vaccine wasn't properly tested, was approved without testing, thanks to government's declarations of emergency. That's why they went with the pandemic designation, correct?
It's true, because if the pharmaceutical companies wanted to have a real business, they have a monopoly on the vaccines. And this is what they tried by using new vaccines, using adjuvants, using new technologies to breed the virus for the vaccine. And these were patented methods, so they could monopolize it and tell the governments that this was a pandemic vaccine, a special one, which they can produce more quickly than normally. And this is what they made the contracts. And so this is the trick, how the big pharmaceutical companies had this marketing commitment.
Okay.
Normally
Go ahead.
you can... Yeah, pardon?
Go ahead.
Yeah, normally you can, if you have the virus, which is to come, you make a mixture of certain viruses you expect to come. And there are so many facilities all over the world which would be able to produce non-patented vaccines everywhere, very fast and very much adapted to the epidemiological situation. But when you do this with a monopoly, when you have such a small passage only, and everything has to go through those few enterprises, it is not faster, it's not quicker. And I think it is just the wrong pandemic plans we do. We should have no patents on vaccines. This is what we think politically. The Council of Europe already had a decision on this. They said there should be no patents, no monopoles possible on life-saving vaccines.
Because, Doctor, doesn't that also incentivize the big pharma to engage in hype and hoaxes and fraud because it is a monetary driver?
Yes, I think it is their trick that they always try to monopolize this, and we pay much more like this if we would pay the scientists to find out the best vaccines and to develop the best vaccines, and let this do without patents and let them be copied all over the world very fast.
Right.
The taxpayer would be much better off, and it would be much cheaper.
Now, Dr. Wolfgang Wodarg, I want to move quickly because I know your time is precious here and you're very busy. I have so many questions, but a thought that I just had when you mentioned the third world, they're already saying they're going to ship this throughout the year around the world when they admit that the virus is already mutated and is already even weakening more, and in 6 months, a year, it'll be absolutely worthless if it wasn't already worthless, and they're saying they're going to ship the unused vaccine because the hoax failed, the people didn't take it en masse, to the third world. I mean, is that not manifest fraud on top of fraud right there?
But there is no influenza in the hot countries, and they don't need it. And there is no influenza in the Arctic neither. The virus needs a certain climate to spread, and this is only in our regions in winter. And so we don't. The third world doesn't need it really. But I had a discussion yesterday with Japanese colleagues, and the Japanese, they are going to have the vaccination campaign in February. So they just will start now, and they know already that it is a very mild flu to come, and there is no danger in it. But Japan bought vaccines for 110 million people, and they cannot retire from this vaccine contract. So they are in a very, very big political dilemma now, and they have very big problems because the Japanese people, they already know it wouldn't be necessary to get vaccinated. What shall Japan do with all its vaccines?
But that's my next issue, is this is destroying the credibility of the entire medical system when it is Big Pharma that is doing it. In the Council of Europe report, it is discussed that this is an untested, dangerous vaccine. Can you speak to that? Also, can you speak to the German military and government ministers being given a special additive-free vaccine? That isn't a very strong vote of confidence.
Yeah, this is 2 points. The first thing is that the pandemic vaccine is a pandemic vaccine, and it was planned to be produced very fastly, and so this is we have additives, adjuvants, and with it, and they are only tested with elderly people. This is why the FDA in U.S. didn't allow this vaccine to be used with children and younger people in U.S. And so U.S. population is better protected against those side effects. But in Europe, we just use them for children, for pregnant women, and there's no clinical testing has been done with children and with some of the vaccines. And there are other vaccines which you spoke about for soldiers. This is a vaccine which takes the whole virus, and it is known to have more side effects. So it's not better than the ones the rest of the population gets.
Well, yes, sir. Doctor, we know what adjuvants did with the anthrax shot. The Pentagon suspended it because in young people, as you know, doctor, but the audience may not, when you give a young person who has a really strong immune system an adjuvant, it can trigger what the cytokine storm and have the lungs filled full of liquid similar to hemorrhagic fever, correct?
I don't have this scientific evidence for this, but I know that the adjuvants, they stimulate the immune system enormously. And this may lead to misfunction of the immune system, which means that there may be autoimmune diseases or allergic diseases result afterwards within those vaccinated people. So
well, what about all the confirmed cases of Guillain-Barré?
Guillain-Barré was there when they had this vaccine. It was in U.S. when they stopped having this, and this is there is evidence for this. But what they use now is a new patent adjuvant, and we don't have any evidence how the side effects of this will be. But this is a big risk, and it would not be necessary to take this risk.
I mean, sure, if the flu was killing tens of millions of people, it might be if you could trust the shot. But if it's a mild, bottom line, doctor, you personally looking at the research, is this a giant hoax? Was this, I mean, we know they paid off most of the big health ministers to come out and fearmonger. Is that not a conflict of interest?
It is, for sure it is a conflict of interest. Those people who are there for their shareholders, who are had to have the interest of the pharmaceutical companies and to earn a lot of money, they have different reasons to decide, and they decide differently than those people who are in charge of public health and of safety. And the WHO is an institution, a public institution for public health, and its decision should not be influenced by the interests of the industry. And this seems to be what happened. There is no other explanation for those decisions.
Bottom line, it's a hoax.
Yes.
Unbelievable. Dr. Wolfgang Wodarg is our guest. We're going to give you his website when we come back. I'm going to try to twist his arm into staying maybe to 40 after, because we're going to have one 5-minute segment when we come back, and I've got this huge list of questions. If it sounds like I'm interrupting you, doctor, it's just I mean, you are such a great person. This council is doing such great work exposing this fraud.
We all know that the Berkey water purification systems are the most trusted name in water filtration. As an authorized Berkey dealer for over 4 years and serving thousands of satisfied customers, the Berkey